Alright, we're alive.
Hmm?
So, what do you think about Sargon's debate with Kristi Winters and the state of public debates?
Both of which I feel have gone down the tube. And I honestly, Sargon, I, it's just leaving me at a state of what the fuck. Like, I had one impression about how things went when I watched the video and Sargon asked for his commentary. I was making a video to give him advice. Then I started to get a different picture when I started watching the commentary and the other advice people were giving in the comments. And I've now had to change that video I was working on a couple of times, and I think it's going to be ready in a couple of days, or this will end up just being that video because, good
Well, there's
God.
no shortage of videos about this debate. In fact, there are people who seem to be putting out a video about this debate every few hours in a long series of comments on it.
Well, yeah, no, people are putting out videos, and the sad thing is, out of that mess, the only video that really, in my opinion, gives good debate advice is the Distributist video. And he already made a previous, also very good video about Sargon
Uh,
Akkad's other debate.
the Distributionist, I
Yeah,
think.
no, the Distributist.
Well, uh, I will have to look him up and put him in the notes.
All right. Well, either way, he's made two very good videos on giving Sargon debate tips, and I was making a video to add on to that. But certain things about this debate, the details of it seem to keep changing. Like, one of which I was going to emphasize that it appeared during the debate that there was a hostile moderator, the skeptic feminist, yeah, the skeptic feminist who hosted and moderated the debate.
And what made him so hostile?
Well, in the introduction, he gave basically for Doctor Ms. Winters her whole CV saying that she's a professor and all of this stuff, right? Her degrees, what she's done, and for Sargon, he just introduced him as some guy on the internet.
Well, that's a little odd for somebody they invited to debate a
Yeah,
professor.
it was, seemed in pretty bad taste, and it seemed to indicate that the skeptic feminist was being biased against Sargon. And also it didn't do Sargon any favors, right? And if you start reading through the comments later on, because one of the big complaints about this debate was that the moderators appeared to be biased, with that being one of the main pieces of evidence, it turns out, at least according to the skeptic feminist, that both sides wrote their introductions themselves, and Sargon wanted his introduction to be some guy from the internet as a joke.
Okay. Well, I guess then that's not really a sign of the moderator's bias. That's simply a reflection on Sargon's sense of humor.
Yeah, but it didn't come off as a joke, and this is the part that actually makes me lose respect for Sargon, right? Like, losing this debate since he doesn't know how to do debate clearly, and he's facing a strategy that pretty much have to know about in order to defeat in this kind of debate. That's
What strategy
fine.
is that?
The Mott Bailey strategy, but we can get to that in a moment, right?
Would you mind not thumping the table quite so much?
Okay, but anyways, sorry about that. But back to my point. Um, I don't blame him for losing the debate. However, it's kind of shit of him not to make it clear and own up that he wrote his own introduction when a bunch of his fans keep commenting in all the videos about how crappy that introduction was and how it showed that this skeptic feminist was biased.
Okay, yes, well, yeah, since it's not really a sign of bias if he in fact wrote it himself, but how did you find out that he wrote it himself? Is it simply in the rules?
No, because the skeptic feminist has kept putting the comment, replying to basically everyone in the video they've put up, including right now, that no, both sides did this, both sides did this, both sides agreed to this, both sides agreed to that introduction, and basically have been copying and pasting that introduction. If it's not true, Sargon should say something, but as far as I could tell, this is the way things actually went.
Well, yeah, in that case, what's the problem with the moderator?
Well, aside from the introduction,
Well, yes, obviously.
uh, there's then the question, which it was a question of too broad scope for that kind of debate. But then again, it seems that the two of them agreed to that question, and Sargon and Winters. And really, he should have probably stepped in and made a more specific question. And he's now said that in future debates they will have a more specific question. But he obviously has, in my opinion, not moderated a debate before, or they haven't, because it seems to be a couple people, the skeptic feminists. They haven't moderated debates before. And when you take that into consideration, they actually did a pretty good job moderating this.
Well, yeah, I mean, I believe this is one of, if not their first debates that they've been hosting on their channel. And, I mean, while the statement is broad for sort of a college type debate, that's actually sort of a standard type thing that you would do just for a debating society. I mean, it's not terribly useful for discussing issues of the day, but it's a perfectly valid debate motion.
Yes.
And yeah, hopefully he and whoever else is involved in the Skeptic Feminist will learn from that and hold sort of a tighter debate for next time.
And it looks like they have taken this into consideration, and they've even replied to my comment saying that they'd actually make a tighter question, a more specific question, and they'd make it clear that the contestants or the debaters are writing their own introduction, so they won't get so utterly lambasted for it. Okay, as an aside, I question where they made some of they interjected at certain times, but considering now that it's clear that this is the first time they're really doing this, I'm willing to forgive them for that, because that's a problem that a lot of people have when they're first doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I don't really see a problem with the moderation. I mean, unless there actually were cases of actual muting of arguments. I haven't heard anything which hasn't turned out to simply be more minor errors of process than anything else.
Yes.
I mean, really, if you have a problem with how Sargon performed in this debate, your problem really is with Sargon and not taking this quite as seriously as his opponent did.
Oh, yeah, like, and this is the thing, right? In debates like this, like from my experience in politics, right, and being part of societies, I know that usually if you haven't been trained a little bit in debating, like at a university or high school debate club, if you then think you could immediately step into a political debate with, say, four other candidates if you're running for office, or just an informal debate with a reporter where you're doing an interview on a radio show and it turns into some kind of debate, if you think you can do that without any debate knowledge or practice in a formal setting, you get your ass kicked, like, all the time. Like, in every election that I've actually helped people prepare for debates, right? There's always those special candidates that say, no, I know how to debate. I'm intellectually smart. I debate people all the time. Then they go to their first debate and they get their asses kicked.
Well, yeah, I mean, the fact is, a formal debate, especially if it's ones with rules, uh, and not just sort of a filmed conversation, is an entirely different animal to simply discussing things with your friends, or even with your friends that you disagree with.
Oh yes, and well, even in a radio setting, for example, even when it's sort of a conversation, seeing the dynamic changes. You are under pressure, right? You know you have a large audience, and certain things that would go in a personal conversation will not go in a public discussion like that, and you have to be on your toes. I mean, these kind of debates require a bit of knowledge and practice in improv. You can't just wing it and expect to look good. Ah,
Well, I think the bigger problem is: are you debating a friendly audience, a friendly interrogator, or somebody who's attempting to be neutral, as in like a review from an actual journalist attempting to be unbiased, or are you actually having a debate with someone who is going to challenge both you and the things you say actively? And you have to put a lot more effort and take it a lot more seriously, if and not simply be say whatever comes off the top of your head, if you actually have an active antagonist who is going to use the things you say to disprove your arguments.
well, and also, you have to, like, once you're in someone like Sargon's position and you're entering these kind of debate, you can't assume you're going to be at a friendly conversation. Like, you have to always prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Well, also, it's simply, in some ways, good manners in a proper debate to actually know your topic, know your opponent's point of view, and especially know your own point of view, so that, for the most part, you can answer accurately, intelligently any critique of your perspective.
Yes, and
And also, quite frankly, there's a lot of cheese in formal debates, to use a sort of gaming term. And you sort of have to be ready for that cheese and be able to get past it if you're going to actively and seriously discuss any issue with a hostile eh, uh, opponent.
yeah, so like using the Martin Bailey six pool Zerg rush, KKK.
Well, yes. I mean, to use the StarCraft equivalent, you have to be ready for a Zerg rush if you are taking a debate seriously. It's just there is various attacks and techniques in formal debating, which, admittedly, a friendly antagonist will give you the benefit of the doubt on, and not slide in some ad hominems and other things, especially when you make a mistake. But you have to be prepared for people who will do this to you and be able to counter it without getting angry, preferably.
Oh yes, and just to go with the Mott Bailey, because this is unfortunately becoming a more standard debate stratagem people use on I hate to say it, but yes, mostly on the left, but partly on the right as well. Where basically the Distributist does a really good job explaining it. I'll explain it here a bit quicker. The Mott is basically your arguments you believe that are indefensible, right? They're indefensible. They are things like in this debate that Malala Yousafzai's work for women's rights across the world is positive, right? It's really hard to criticize Malala Yousafzai and say that she is having a negative impact in what she's
Well,
doing.
that's not the Mott. That would be more the Bailey.
No, that's the Mott.
Oh,
The
right,
Bailey
yes.
is where you're doing your business.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the Mott, right? It's these arguments that are defensible.
Yeah, well, I got confused when you said they were indefensible.
Oh
Sorry.
yeah, sorry. They're defensible, and it's really difficult to attack them, right? And the Bailey would be those arguments that are used more to get your business done. They're things that you might find useful.
Well, I
But
got the impression more the Bailey is the things that you often say when you're around a friendly audience to sort of give them a rise, but intellectually you have great difficulty defending them, but they're very good amongst a friendly crowd, or things you may believe personally but can't intellectually defend, and you generally don't bring them to a debate.
well, yes, or in terms of politics, the Bailey would be positions you might have had to have had previously in your political life, but now you want to avoid for reasons that has become politically inconvenient. And in terms of politics, that happens quite a bit. For example, when before Justin Trudeau came to power in the Liberal Party, there was a lot more diverse views in the Liberal Party regarding abortion, and there were a bunch of pro-life people in the Liberal Party running as candidates. Then Justin Trudeau came to power in the Liberal Party, and then he declared that no one could run for the Liberal Party if they weren't pro-abortion, right? So then
I believe the term is pro-choice.
pro-choice.
Word to use there.
Fine. He declared they had to be pro-choice, and a bunch of people that had previously had pro-life positions then had to disavow and avoid talking about their previous positions if they wanted to at least stay in the Liberal Party. Uh,
Okay.
Well, it happens, right? Like, there are legitimate reasons to use tactics similar to or derived from Mott and Bailey, right? However, when you're a professor of social science that specializes in feminism and you're debating the man that is putting a petition forward to stop those courses, and he clearly wants to debate you on those topics, using the Mott Bailey tactics, well, one is kind of shit. Two, if you're the professor of that field, you kind of want to defend your field.
Well, now there is where we get into the problem. First of all, she is under no obligation to defend anybody else's ideas. And in fact, under this motion, she's not even technically under an obligation to defend her own ideas.
No.
She's only there to defend the most defensible of, is feminism good for the world?
Yes, that's true. And
so, no, the fact is, while he may want to debate these things which are out currently in the Bailey of feminist theory, she is under no obligation to give him that opportunity.
Well, yes and no, actually, right? In a sense, yeah. by not refusing to debate those topics, right, she was able to win the debate in the question that was stated: is feminism good for the world?
Well,
Ah,
no, I don't believe they declared a winner of the debate, did they?
no, they didn't declare a winner, but virtually every comment, even Sargon himself, acknowledged that Winters won the debate. And I will say that Winters won the debate, at least in terms of the question that was posed in the debate. She clearly won.
Well, yes, but your problem there is feminism good for the world? Actually, probably Sargon agrees that feminism as a whole is good for the world.
Yes, and
I'm
that's
not sure he's a good antagonist for that motion, or even that he wants to be antagonistic towards that motion. He simply wants to attack the extremes that he sees in feminism and social justice thought.
and that's part of the reason why this question was as bad as it is. Like, as the Distributist stated, right, this is a question that in part Sargon already agrees with, and another tactic she could have used to win the question would be to just refer to previous video clips where Sargon explained that this portion of feminism or this idea is good, and that's probably part of the reason why she cited things like Malala Yousafzai. And that just goes to kind of how crap the question was.
Well, no, the question isn't crap. It's just Sargon came to debate his own point of view, not this particular question, and his own point of view isn't actually antagonistic to this motion. The problem is Sargon accepted the debate under these conditions without wanting to debate that motion.
Yeah, that is a problem, Sargon, and he should have wanted to debate that question. And I would say also that Kristi Winters, if she had more respect for her own faculty, should have also wanted to debate her field. Like,
Well,
look,
yes, presumably this comes on the heels of his petition, and really they should have argued actually the motion of his petition. He should have been on the positive side of the actual statement of the position, and she should have been on the negative side.
yes.
I mean, I could be wrong about this, and maybe this debate was scheduled before he did his whole petition thing, but I don't believe so.
No, it wasn't. And the debate I was expecting, and Sargon seemed to expect, at least from his opening statement, was a debate of basically his petition and these social sciences that Kristi Winters is an expert of and teaches.
Well, that's the problem. I mean, it looks like Sargon expected this to be one of his live stream discussions, which he often has with, or at least attempts to have with people that he disagrees with. I think he had a recently one with, what was it, the Libertarian Socialists just after this debate, in which they talked about their disagreements. And that is not what he agreed to do. So I think he seems to have misunderstood what he was agreeing to.
Well, that's probably true. But going a little bit back, and this is my criticism of Kristi Winters, right? I know what the question that is posed is, but you are debating the man that is trying to shut down your career and your faculty and is having a petition to do it. And not only that, as he mentioned in the debate, the whole field of social psychology is under attack and in flames right now. They are having this crisis where about a third of their research is not replicable, and they know it.
Yeah, but that would presume that she wanted a straightforward, intellectually honest debate simply about her academic field. And this debate is far more friendly to her position, whether she's being intellectually honest or not. Because at this point, she can make Sargon look like a bit of a fool and stack the deck entirely in her favor.
Well, and this is actually something that comes into my little trainings that I've run in politics, right? Because one of the problems people have if they have been in tournament level debates, right, is at least usually in the debates they end up as a candidate is, right, they're usually able to look good, but they usually don't really do anything for themselves, right? You have to kind of get out of that idea, right, for the next little level of starting to achieve minor objectives and victories that might be outside of the context of the questions you're posed in the debate, right? Because, yeah, in a sense, right, she made Sargon look like a fool, right? She did do that, but she didn't actually do anything to really dent or stem his efforts against her field.
Well, that depends on what the objective of this was. Whether this objective was simply to have a debate on the issue, or this objective was to counteract Sargon's attack on her field, or the objective was just to discredit Sargon as an intellectual thinker. While the debate wasn't really successful on the first two counts, it did have a measure of success of discounting his intellectual capacities.
Well, in a way it does, but not really. Like,
oh no, I don't think it'll have a serious effect on his channel,
yeah.
or his ability to project his message, or even as a real reflection on his actual intelligence.
Well,
But
look,
he performed badly in a debate against a serious academic
well,
of the field that he is attacking.
look, but still, all she has gained for herself is that she won the debate. That's pretty much it. She can go for and argue that,
How much more could she have gained?
well, she didn't actually defend her faculty or show that his petition was wrong or his criticisms of social sciences are wrong.
Not in any direct way. But I'm not sure how she could have effectively achieved that in a better way under the circumstances.
Well, Sargon was bringing the points up even in the Q&A, at least in the Q&A section, she could have actually argued them.
Would her arguments have helped her position?
Well, there you go. That's the thing, right? Because if you're pretty much, by her engaging in these tactics, right, in this kind of debate, she's kind of admitting that her field is the Bailey, and she does not believe they're defensible. And a good point about this, right, was when Sargon did get a minor hit on her by when he was talking about that feminism is spreading misinformation, right? That the president of the United States was spreading and publishing the study about I believe it was the wage gap, right? As well as
I think it was the 1 in 5 rape statistic
yeah,
on
sorry, it was
colleges.
1 in 5 or 1 in 4 statistic in college, right? And she refused to engage in that point. She in fact said, "Well, I don't know what the president's opinion is," and she implied that she doesn't agree with that statistic, even though the Distributist in his comment section has noted that she has advocated this statistic and have put it into some of her papers.
Yes, he could have outed her for being intellectually dishonest by now denying that statistic. I mean, there's still a defense for that, in that she could say that not all of feminist theory and critique in departments actually is dependent on or believes the statistic if she truly wants to abandon it. But yes, it would effectively make her herself uh, look dishonest in her undertaking of feminist advocacy.
Yes, like if you're a professor of this field, you've used this statistic in papers, yeah. Not engaging Sargon on that point will probably help you win the debate. However, it makes you look pretty bad. It's on the similar level of what was that journalist's name that Sargon debated a few months ago? What's his name?
I'm not familiar, but I believe you're the one talking about the one who denied he knew what the New York Times
Yes.
was.
He was also engaging in a similar strategy, and he was basically denying that he knew what it was or what Salon was.
Yes, I believe he also denied, yes, knowledge of Salon and Vox.com,
Yes.
along with the New York Times, the preeminent source of journalism currently in our time, although I have my own disagreements with some of their editorial policies. Uh,
Yes. It did not do that guy any favors, and it didn't do her any favors. Again, like, Michael Brooks, that's his name. Like, if you are so inclined in your field and you've used these statistics, you kind of do have an obligation to defend it, or else you are sort of admitting, even if he doesn't bring it up to people that are going to watch the debate later, that you don't believe in it.
well, you are basically saying you don't think it's defensible in a debate. You don't have an obligation in a debate to defend things, especially if you don't actually. Well, actually, even if you do believe them, you don't have an obligation to defend them in a debate. Uh, but yes, the fact that she sort of ceded grounds on things she has publicly stated indicates her lack of confidence in being able to defend them. If she had wanted to defend that statistic as valid, then she should have been willing to defend it openly in debate and been able to back it up. But I believe the argument she's sort of making in the debate is that while there are some extremists in the feminist movement, mainstream feminism is overall a good, helpful thing. And in that cause, abandoning a statistic of dubious authenticity is perfectly valid. It's just not particularly honest to her own opinions.
Her own opinions that are reflected in papers she's written and her own YouTube channel.
Yes. And Sargon, if he had bothered to watch any of her YouTube videos or read any of her papers, would have been able to call her on that. At which point she would either have had to defend those statements or abandon her own opinions.
Well, yes, and again, still, you do, if you actually believe in it, you should, and you believe you can debate it, you should engage on these, especially if you are a doctor. Again, yes, she met the technical requirements for winning the debate. In a tournament debate, she won hands down, right? But if you're, say, in a debate, say, about is Christianity good for the world, right? And your argument in that debate against the frothing atheist is that, well, all acts that are generous and do good in the world, as Jesus prescribed, are Christian acts. You're not actually going to do yourself any favors or your beliefs or your faculty justice.
Well, as a Christian, you could actually believe that all good acts that humanity does, even if done by a non-Christian, is inspired by Christ.
Yeah, you could actually believe that. That is true. At the same time, it is not useful to advancing your cause.
Well, it depends what your cause is, but yes, I do sort of see your point there. I mean, effectively, if you're treating this debate as a way to convince others of the rightness of your personal beliefs in the goodness or lack of goodness of feminism and its influence on the world, then yes, avoiding some of the more difficult issues in order to win a debating point is not actually advancing your own cause. It's simply winning a debating point.
Yeah.
So yes, if you take this as a debate as a serious attempt to present the best possible case for what you believe is right and true, then yes, she abdicated her defense of what she apparently believes is in fact right and true
Well,
in order
yes.
to have a better debating position.
Yes, and again, it's not like there's a trophy she's going to be awarded or some prize money. This isn't a debate contest. It is basically a debate held online to try and convince people of one way or another or achieve some other end. The only
Well, as I say, it depends what's the objective there. The objective is to out Sargon as not being as smart as he thinks he is, while not allowing the feminist cause to be damaged. Her tactic is not overall a bad tactic. If her tactic is to defend the somewhat controversial statements of feminism that in fact they are a valid and true improvement of the world and present that case, well, no, she abandoned that case.
yes, and even then, right? Yeah, she did humiliate Sargon a little bit, but given what the question was, the optics of the introduction, since it's not well known that Sargon wanted that introduction, uh, and
Yeah, but
th-
once again, that's in no way her fault. And as the evidence has come out, and certainly Sargon is not, at least as far as I know, disagreed with it, that is sort of just a picky point that wasn't really a valid criticism.
yes, but still, she's just shown that she's better at, say, tournament debate than Sargon is. Like, and she can say that she defeated Sargon a bit and she embarrassed him a little bit. Considering what is currently going on, that is not helping her or her cause that much.
Yeah, but the fact is, as far as the entire culture war goes, which is currently raging across the Western world, at least on the internet, this is a blip on the radar. There was no great achievement to be done by either side in this. Even if Sargon had utterly crushed her intellectually, it wouldn't really have moved anything, and vice versa.
Uh, well, look, yeah, it wouldn't have been a victory on either side. It wouldn't have mean that much, but victories like this for either side are important. And part of the problem of the feminist and social justice cause they have, and why, in a way, they're kind of, and their main weakness is they're not willing to debate the beliefs that they seem to be preaching. And they can only get away with this for so long.
Well, so far they've gotten away with it effectively for over a decade.
Yes, but for that,
Arguably, actually, to some extent, in certain areas of university, while their influence has expanded since then, they've been getting away with this for many decades.
yes, but they haven't been seriously challenged on it till very recently.
Oh, there's been various challenges across time. It's just none of it has really changed the course of basically academia and the sort of uh, attempt to remove any sort of uh, uh, well, judgment on the rightness or wrongness of any particular course's materials.
All right, but still, all right, you have at least a presidential candidate who is the antithesis of everything they believe in. There is a doing a very surprisingly well petition made by Sargon to stop teaching their courses. Uh they're not doing as well as they once were. And also from a moral point of view, if you are unable to defend the beliefs you're preaching, then your beliefs probably aren't worth preaching.
Well, this is, as I say, one fight amongst many, and the sort of victory they achieved would have actually been a quite effective victory, say, in a political campaign, to move on to the other half of today's topic. The fact is, if you make your opponent get angry and effectively score points off them, it actually does have an effect, certainly in the press and the sort of messaging for the two campaigns.
Right. At the same time as looking in YouTube about the debates about this, the general saying on YouTube seems to be how screwed Sargon was.
Yes, but I'm trying to move on to the political debate part of this.
Yeah, and I'm trying to just finish my point and just explain other things that Sargon could have done. Or if you want to move on to that, well, just go over.
Ahead.
Look, and this is the thing, just if entering into debates like this, right, in the more advanced level, you have to have your objective. And that kind of objective, in my opinion, is a piss poor objective. You need to kind of go for the greater win, especially if you are say a professor in that field. Like if Stephen Harper would start being...
All right, we have achieved the fact that she had not taken the optimal path to achieve a great victory for feminist theory.
All right, anyways, but into things Sargon could do, like, the thing is, he should understand that a lot of debates are based on having a bit of practice in improv. Like, again, people fail at this. Like, I've seen actual trial lawyers that decide to run for office, and they usually don't go to the debate prep because they feel they can argue quite well in a debate, and they too get usually trashed because they're not used to that bit of improv. They're too used to being able to foment their arguments beforehand and have plenty of time to crystallize them, and usually they are not actively debating against a hostile opponent, or they are, but there's at least a judge between them and they basically are making long statements. And you need to train for that. You need to basically have a friend that pretends to be your opponent, and you have to try and debate them and go through that a few times. And preferably you should try and also, through that exercise, attempt to debate from the other person's point of view. It helps anticipating their strategies. And as you recite your arguments and you kind of get an idea of what arguments are stronger or which ones are not, or how to word your arguments, you end up doing a lot better just out of that.
Yes, that is if Sargon decides to continue on with a course of actually doing formal debates, as opposed to getting mildly drunk on stream and chatting with his friends, or occasionally people who disagree with him, in which case he seems to do perfectly well. So if he wants to win formal debates, then yes, he needs to practice against the techniques and cheese which comes with formal debates.
Yes, and also just to state on the necessity, like, look, yeah, it's a drop in a pond, but these things are important. The way atheism, for example, came to somewhat more prominence and pushed back a bunch of things from the Christian right was engaging the evolutionists and other groups in public debate and scoring points and trying to win those debates.
Well, that's still controversial in the atheist community. While there was the age of the three horsemen, who actually did often do public debates, the fact is a large number of people in the atheist community are still committed to the idea that debating with creationists just gives them an opportunity to uh, show their message and give them publicity, and it should be avoided at all costs, which is why Bill Nye got a fair amount of blowback when he was willing to do that debate against I think it was Ken Ham, in a public debate at Ken Ham's institution.
And I would say that that is, in my opinion, a rather foolish view, especially since it was those series of debates over decades that was able to push back the creationalists from what was a dominant position.
Well, that in some legal cases.
Some legal
But
cases, but still, it was a series of debates, and with regards to creationism, not just atheists, but over a century where they were pushed back because they really didn't have anything to fall back on that wasn't the Bible. And one of the ways to push back social justice slowly is to engage them in debates and win. And right now, the only person that seems to be doing that every once in a while is a flamboyantly gay man who's a bit of an asshole, but we love him.
well, yes. I mean, he does do formal debates. Well, actually, he has done some, although he sort of got no platformed on most of them.
He gets,
But in this point, he's just giving speeches with his friends and doing the occasional sort of television debate, which isn't really much of a debate.
no, it's not much of a debate, but it's still kind of important. But as far as I know, he's really the only one doing it. And the best way to well, not maybe not the best way, but one of the ways to push things back is to engage in more debates like this and not do this piss poorly. And certain people, well, that are kind of in the anti-SJW community need to rise up and engage in these debates. One of,
Well, I would agree in the sense that, as I say, if Sargon wants to continue to engage in actual formal debates against people who are antagonistic to his beliefs, he should actually practice the debate format and the standard strategies and tactics involved with it.
oh yes, and it's not.
That's up to him. I mean, he also can decide that he will just go for casual conversations from now on and leave the debating for others.
All right, but even with conversations, like that's what he tried to have with Michael Brooks, right, the journalist. That didn't work out too well. He really should, if he's continuing on, do the practice, and I think it would do the cause a tremendous amount of good.
Oh, well, yes, if he or somebody else who was relatively prominent publicly, or at least on the internet, was willing to put in the effort to learn how to really debate and knock down the obvious straw men of his antagonist arguments, then he would definitely do his cause some significant good. But really, it's up to him on whether he wants to put in that effort or just be some guy on the internet.
Well, considering he's asked the internet for debating points and help, I assume he wants to get better and continue on.
Well, then we will have to see if he takes any of their advice and does a better job the next time.
I guess so, if you want to move to something else, but sure.
If you have more to say, then just say it.
No, let's just move on. We can
All
talk
right.
about the state in general in debate, where people don't seem to realize what's important, or that the entire art form seems to have gone down the toilet.
No, it seems to be that debate, at least, the little bit. I mean, there's usually debate clubs still in most universities and many high schools, is that actual argumentation is no longer taught regularly in school. And as a result, people aren't able to tell the sort of cheesy tactics from the actual legitimate tactics when they see a debate. Mind you, as far as public debates go, some of the stuff on television is not exactly well set up, and the candidates' debates for, say, the U.S. Primaries, well, in some respects, because they had so many participants, couldn't be set up well. But even as the participant numbers dropped, were not handled well or gave you really much ability to discern what the true intentions of the various candidates would be if they were to become the candidate, let alone president.
Well, look, it wasn't even a problem with well, yeah, you could make the argument the Republicans had to use that debate format because of the number of candidates, but the Democrats were using the same debate format, and they had 4 candidates to start, I believe.
Yes, I believe that's right.
4 candidates, and then 2 of them dropped out.
Yeah, relatively quickly.
And for the most part, it's just been Hillary and Sanders with that terrible debate format of Hillary Clinton, here's a question. Sanders, now here's another question. Just give your answers, and maybe every once in a while you can argue between yourselves.
As we attempt to shut you up so we can ask more of the questions that we've come up with.
Yes. And we're not even going to make an attempt to try and make this look at like a fair debate with questions like, Hillary Clinton, why is your policy so good? Bernie Sanders, why are you accused of being the devil?
No, I believe that's Ted Cruz.
Well, yes, but
Bernie
yeah,
Sanders is Stalin.
it was pretty bad. And part of the reason Trump was able to do so well was the debate format, right? He didn't really have to go into too much detail in what he believes or what his policies actually were and defending his policies. Everyone was basically only able to go into a very superficial explanation of what they wanted to do. And Trump just is a much better improvisation. He was able to get out those zingers, like that really good one with Jeb Bush, where Bush was talking about how great his family and was talking about how wonderful a person his mother was. And then Trump was able to come in there with the zinger of, she should be the one running for president.
Oh, yes. Well, that's the thing. In American politics, a good zinger has always worked rather well. It at least gets you a bunch of press coverage, and Donald Trump has effectively thrived off free press coverage.
Yes, and the debate format didn't change. Yeah, that was part of the reason he did so well. That and really, Bush and especially Marco Rubio really over-rehearsed their talking points. Like, again, in terms of politics, I found that being able to improvise a bit really pays real dividends. And it had Marco Rubio been more willing to improvise, he probably would not have become Robot Rubio and lose in his home state.
Well, yeah, I mean, the fact was, though, the majority of people didn't watch the debates, although they got relatively good ratings. The majority of them just heard whatever the press coverage and the late-night talk show jokes were about the debates.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And also, since logic, reasoning, and argumentation is no longer taught in schools, it's difficult for people to easily judge when somebody is just completely bullshitting them.
Well, that's not exactly true, though. The press coverage after that people heard about was, and especially the Republican debate, was almost uniformly Trump lost, Trump lost, Trump didn't do anything, Trump was terrible. And then when you polled people about what they thought who won the debate, usually it ended up being they thought Trump won the debate. And a lot of people watched the Republican debates this time. And just to say, as the debates are becoming more available on live stream and YouTube, and you can watch them at your leisure, a lot more people are watching them. And I think this election year, they've become a lot more important.
A lot more people are watching debates, but an even larger number of people are watching the zinger cutouts from the debates. And Trump got an awful lot of those.
Yes, he did. But
and also, they weren't saying that Trump was losing the debates in the early debates. The fact was, back when they thought Trump was still going to burn out and disappear, they were more than happy to say how well he was doing.
Yeah, but that pretty much ended in about, October, November? And then the parade of, there were a lot of debates after that, and they were uniformly trying to say Trump lost. I think only Breitbart and the Drudge Report were trying to argue that Trump won or did well.
Yes, but they still covered all the zingers and statements that he made. In fact, they covered his zingers and statements far more than what anyone else said, even when they're covering them in a negative light. And that makes it look like he was dominating the debate, even if what he said was awful, terrible, and wrong.
All right, but they were still doing what they could to try and argue that he lost. Like, the influence of the trying to form a narrative after the debate that someone did worse than they actually did or better than they actually did really seems to have lost its effect. Like, I know it was...
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, then we agree. But yeah, no, Trump's ability to improvise really helped him. And that's part of the reason the debate format, especially since I feel a lot more people are watching this debate, should go back to one of the more traditional formats, because this is bullshit.
Well, sadly, this sort of has been the traditional format of political debates in the United States for the past couple decades. So I'm not sure it's going to change anytime soon. In fact, both of the party operations seem to be pushing it very hard and picking the moderators which will go along with their version of what a debate needs to be, in which their candidates don't need to embarrass themselves and damage themselves so much potentially for the main contest.
And
the thing is, while narrative matters, what I'm trying to say is people don't trust journalists. Just the journalists saying that somebody lost or won or is bad or right or wrong isn't what sets the narrative after the debate. The coverage does to a certain extent, but not in the sense that people believe the journalists, simply in what the coverage is of.
All right.
At least that's my argument. Because journalists are barely trusted more than politicians. In fact, in certain polls, they actually score under politicians.
All right.
As actual personalities. Although people tend to like the individual journalists that they follow, just like they tend to like the individual politicians they've actually voted for, just not the class as a whole.
All right. But I was just trying to argue that a lot more people are watching the debates. And yes, we agree that a lot of the influence on the post-debate narrative has melted away. But
Oh, well, there is the point where we disagree. I don't believe that the increase in number of people who are watching the entire debate is actually that influential. I still think it's largely funny YouTube clips and things people see on Facebook and comment on and pay attention to, which actually is providing the bigger influence. Although you usually do have that one friend who watched it and they will tell you about all the interesting moments. But I don't think the majority of people are actually watching the whole debate through, and that is the thing which is actually influencing them.
considering the numbers these debates have gotten, I really disagree. And
Yes, that is
also,
where we disagree.
and also, it's been large. Well, anyways, we can just move on. And there's no need to really delve into that point.
All right.
Uh, but going back to what we we're talking about, now, still, if they want to avoid candidates like Donald Trump, they do have to get back to a older debate format or a more standard one, not this asking these gotcha questions and trying to choose winners, because it's no longer working.
Well, in many ways, what they need to do, even more than sort of the debates, especially when they have multiple candidates, is actually do in-depth interviews with the particular candidates on what they believe and actually delve into their particular policy ideas and their policy positions and have them effectively issue statements in public in their own voice about important issues of the day. Now, getting politicians to do that will be somewhat difficult.
I don't know. There's a lot of politicians that I think want that kind of debate format.
Well, I'm not even talking necessarily about debate. I'm talking about just in-depth
I
interviews
think
lasting, sort of like over an hour. And yes, the fact is, politicians that are, say, falling behind or not doing as well and are willing to take the chance of telling people exactly what they think probably would be willing to do it. And hopefully, you would have journalists who would be willing to actually do it as well.
well, I think the latter one is more the problem. Like, I have met very few politicians that would not want to do an in-depth interview and really go into their views on a subject. Like, especially, and I think the evidence for that is really shown that if you usually when you take an interview that is done that's published in a newspaper between a candidate, for example, and what's actually published in the newspaper, usually that interview runs for hours and the article only focuses on a small bit and publishes a few choice quotes. Like,
Yes, and that's somewhat unfortunate.
like
Oh, incidentally, breaking news, it looks like Donald Trump has won Indiana.
yeah, that's not a surprise. Uh,
No, not really a surprise.
yes. But, and this is more of the fault of the journalists. Like, it's really, in my opinion, been Jon Stewart that would have the short interview in 5 minutes and then have the much longer interview later, that certain places have started putting up the longer interview. Like CTV News had an interview with a Canadian general that's assisting the Kurds, right? And they only would show on their program a couple of very short clips. But the interview itself, they actually put online, at least, and it goes on for a lot more, and it gets more into in-depth questions and what they're actually doing.
Well, yes, admittedly, that was a very good thing Jon Stewart did. I mean, not nearly long enough for what I'm thinking of, but still a lot better than sort of the sort of 5 minute little clip interviews, which you end up seeing so much of. Also, I mean, the politicians technically have websites and have positions, and somebody, a preferably a respected journalist, should actually go through all their stated positions and then go through them with it on sort of an hour-long format.
Yeah, and that's what should happen. But to be quite frank, a lot of journalists have stopped trying to do that kind of work. Part of the problem with especially newspaper journalism is they're just looking for that one or two quotes to put into their article, and they don't care about what the person is actually saying, which is rather unfortunate. And in a way, it's sort of the way with debates as well. I mean, a lot of the debate itself has turned into from what would be an actual debate between candidates into the journalists just asking questions.
Well, that's a question. Do you think it would be a good idea, say, for U.S. candidate debate, to actually have a formal debate of motions, ask the candidates to either choose the positive or negative side, and then actually follow formal debate rules and process, and have them effectively defend the position or attack the position? I
It's
mean,
really...
technically, I mean, if you're looking at the Lincoln-Douglas debates, although they weren't quite formal debates, they were, well, a lot more formal than the debates we have now, and were around issues.
I think it would I think it would, depending on what the motion was. But yeah, I think it would be useful to actually do that.
But then again, once again, since debate has never been the highest priority in U.S. education, and even less so now, I mean, formal debate, would any of the politicians really have any training or experience in doing formal debates? I mean, I suppose a few of them would have taken college debating, and
Oh no. Look, if you're running for president, and generally in the United States, you do go through at least debate boot camp, right? Like, you have to understand my experience, like in Canadian politics, is I usually have worked with people that have very little to zero chance of winning, and but they still have to do these interviews and enter into these debates and try and achieve something and not embarrass themselves. And that's kind of the thing with Canadian politics, and kind of even sort of the positive thing of Canadian politics is a lot of people that end up becoming MPs and MLAs usually didn't start out as career politicians. And they usually don't have that experience in debate, whereas in the United States, usually if you're running for at least a congressional or senatorial seat or for president, you're usually more experienced in politics, and you're kind of making a choice for it to be your career. And both the Republican and Democratic parties will make sure you learn how to debate and argue.
Yes, but there's a difference between sort of online TV debating and not embarrassing yourself and formal debating.
Yes, there is.
And we're arguing sort of two different points here, whether politicians should learn how to debate, which presumably they all should at least know how to not embarrass themselves when dealing with an antagonistic questioner, and whether there should be active formal debates as part of the political process.
All right. Well, I'll say yes to both of those, especially since technically the job in both the American Congress and Senate, as well as the Canadian Parliament and parliamentary systems in general, is spending most of your time sitting there and having debates with very specific rules moderated by the speaker.
Well, definitely in the parliamentary system, there is a tradition of on-the-floor debates and questioning. Not as much in the American system.
Yeah, but it's still there. It's technically part of your job.
Technically, yes, you do get to up and speak before the House or the Senate on various issues and even in filibusters, although usually you don't have any direct questioning other than the other person's getting up and doing their speech on a particular issue.
Yes. But still, it's kind of what you're being paid to do. It's something you should do. Otherwise, you're kind of a voting machine, which is kind of a problem also in democracies nowadays.
Well, I definitely think politicians should spend a lot more time, especially if they want to be more than just career politicians and actually want to change things, learning how to present their ideas such that other people can effectively attempt to argue their ideas and they can defend their ideas against counter argument, thus hopefully convincing open-minded people of the rightness of their course of action.
Hmm.
And that should in many ways be a politician's job, certainly an advocate's job. But in many ways, I think this largely also comes down to, once again, the fact that logic, argumentation, and debate have become a very low priority for the educational system. And people don't know how useful it can be, and actually not just allowing people to argue civilly, but also in being able to try and understand a contentious issue and perhaps make up your mind, or at least learn new things, or at least how to defend the thing that you believe to be true, and possibly find that you wasn't quite as true as you thought it was.
Well, yes, and also it's like debating is an intellectual sport, and it's something that should be encouraged.
Actually, yes, I sort of wish there was more debate sports sort of online. I mean, is this community for it. Admittedly, it's a very small community, but I mean, if you can have a online StarCraft, League of Legends, or chess, or bridge, or anything like that, it would be nice if there was an online active debating community,
Well,
which would engage in, well, not just the issues of the day, but even silly stuff, and encourage logical argumentation.
that's this problem, I think, is with the silly stuff, though. Like, silly stuff is fine, but part of the reason I quit the debate club at university, right, wasn't that I was terrible at debate or I didn't like to debate, but the silly stuff at least at that time, like, I like doing silly stuff, and I like doing things like debating whether or not the Force in Star Wars exists in the Star Wars universe or not. And those debates are fun, but I found that at least when I was in the debate club, a lot of people there was way too much silly debate in that club and other clubs. And you can only debate silly stuff for so long before it gets annoying. And I really would have liked a lot more debates on the issues of the day, and that's what I would like to see more online.
Well, usually, at least this used to happen in universities, is the debate club would actually partner up with the various sort of young whatever party clubs at the university, and then sponsor debates between the members of the debate clubs together with two different or more different party groups. In the US, it would be like young Republicans, young Democrats, and then hold actual debates on issues.
Which would have been quite nice, at least in the University of Alberta, at the time I was in university. There really weren't too many political clubs. There was practically, like, based on parties, there was no Liberal Party club. There was an NDP club. the conservative club had kind of a phantom-like existence. And that was about it.
Well, that's sort of too bad. I mean, usually the debate club usually also sponsors the debates between the various candidates for like Students' Union as well.
Oh, yes, and that was part of the problem I felt in the Students' Union. It was in the election times. The debate club wasn't organizing the debates for it, and neither was like any of the news outlets like the Gateway, or the student paper, I should say. It was basically the debate was organized by the guy running the election.
Ah, well, I suppose that's better than nothing.
Yeah, it's better than nothing.
Well, that's sort of way it's gotten, where debates are simply a pro forma thing that you're supposed to do, and you do them because you're supposed to do them without realizing why you're supposed to do them.
Well, you don't realize what you're supposed to do. I mean, also, running a debate and trying to stay neutral and being a good moderator takes a certain amount of work and skill, right? And it's kind of why I'm now actually quite happy with these skeptical feminists, because based on what he and she had to work with, they actually ended up doing quite well. And it's kind of unfortunate that certain things were miscommunicated and they got blamed for being biased. And I really hope they're able to hold more debates like this. But finding good moderators that know what questions to ask is rather hard. Like, even in Canadian politics, in the agreed upon debates, like, traditionally the debates are just held by the CBC. And the CBC has long been shown not to be exactly unbiased. And it was only in the last election they had a series of debates where they had different people moderating them to various effects.
Well, yes, I mean, there's also a difference between a moderator who asks questions and a moderator who simply moderates, as in most of the formal debate process. Although, like in the Sargon Kristi Winters, where there's a question period afterwards, the moderator has to get a bit more active.
Well, yes.
And
But even then, finding moderators is hard, and also finding hosts for these sort of things is difficult, especially since, well, organizations have now been forced or have taken sides. Like a bunch of universities that would have been nice to have a debate between, say, Kristi Winters and Sargon of Akkad, will have no platform Sargon of Akkad. If you would want to have a debate about, say, Gamergate at a gaming convention, a bunch of those gaming conventions won't allow the other contenders.
They wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Or touch it with a 10-foot pole. Hell, if you wanted to have a debate about whether or not anime is cultural appropriation at an anime convention, again, it wouldn't be allowed. And the amount of places you could have these debates have gone really down.
Well, let's be fair. The fact is, commercial money-making operations have tended not to want to have debates on their core products.
True, but non-profit societies that are deciding on policies for their little event, or mainly the universities, because universities are where these debates really should be held, are basically preventing the main place for them to be held because there's no platforming one side or the other. Like, heck, in a different sense, unlike the old Palestinian versus Israeli debates that used to be quite popular in universities, have now basically been banned due to the two sides not being able to come together without the threat of violence anywhere.
Hmm. Well, yes, but they're looking once again at the real failing of the educational system, especially universities, which are supposed to be the area where students come across dangerous and new ideas and then argue them out with their peers and to some extent in the classroom, to a place in which a safe environment in which a lack of intellectual challenge is encouraged.
Yes, and that's the problem. But no, I hope the skeptical feminist continues on and has more debates like this. And I hope Sargon learns some more of the basics of debates and just basically does some practice, because that will allow him to articulate his points a lot better. And I'd also like Ms. Winters to be willing to engage her point, well, what she teaches about her faculty and the things she actually believes in. Because it is,
Well, I think if you get a different topic there, they have a different motion, then possibly you might be able to get something more productive.
yes, potentially. But still, I'd like a lot of the people in these positions to actually debate what they believe in. Like, it's kind of pathetic. But still, hopefully that will start happening. And YouTube and the way Google Hangouts runs, like the skeptical atheist has shown that it can be used for debates like this, and I hope we have more.
I mean, the skeptical feminist.
Sorry, the skeptical feminist. Yeah.
Yes, well, no, actually, I think the more debates we have, even ones in which people come to not entirely prepared, the better.
Yes.
But I think we have talked this
Yes,
through.
it's time to end.
Yes, it's time to end. Good luck and good night.